All right. We'll give everybody a second here to gather in while we're going live here. Just a few minutes short on time in the middle of a lot of things right now, but holy cow, do we have a lot to cover. Holy cow. So let me make sure that our live stream is actually up and running. I don't see it on mine. I see views on there. There we go. We are live. All right. Again, we'll give everybody about a minute here to get settled in. Got a bunch of stuff to cover today. Many of you follow the news as closely as I do, so you're going to know a lot of different things that I'm going to repeat for you, and I hear that quite a bit. I don't really do this for you. I do it for the folks out there that don't have the time to watch the news, to pay attention to the markets, to pay attention to what's happening in every corner of the universe. And right now, this is one of the reasons, aside from being very sick for a few days, this is one of the reasons I haven't done many lives lately, but we have a lot of interviews coming out. I think you're going to like on the interview series, on the video part. And then, of course, here on the live stream, this is where I do the Rice Report itself. And we're going to get a lot more hot and heavy with this in the coming days because it took me 2 weeks. I mean, we've been living through the most frantic period in U.S. history for executive orders and big change, which is exactly what we all wanted. But I wanted to give it some time to simmer and not just kind of hum-haw through the difficult things and the easy things and then figure out what this means to us. I'm really not here to report news. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to take a look in between the lines and to educate as much as I possibly can. So that is a really big part of this. So if you're following me on Twitter or Telegram or any of those places, please drop in questions into the chat or DM me on Twitter. Just, Eric, can you help me understand what this means? Like today, we're going to go through the Sovereign Wealth Fund. I know people have never heard of that before. I have. I've been in finance for a long time, so help explain some of these difficult things and understand what they mean for us from both sides. To be honest, I think it's important to look at things from a good and a bad side. And, I tell people, I've been telling people for years, the only person you should trust that's ever walked this earth is Jesus Christ. But President Trump is doing a really good job right now, and we got to place trust in him because he's our leader. And there's many things he's doing right now that if you don't understand what he's doing, you could be over exuberant or you could be over melancholied. And I'm trying to create a simple balance here where you can get basic information spoken in plain English that will allow you to understand what is happening in the world around you, because we are really flying through stuff. So we are at 8:33 right now, 8:34. So let's go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here tonight. My name is Eric Rice. This is the Rice Report. God bless you all. I hope you are enjoying the victories that we're seeing across this great land for freedom and sovereignty. And I hope you are also a little bit nervous about some of the things that are happening in this country, because this is not going to be a smooth ride. We are watching a complete disruption of a 200, maybe 400-year-old bureaucracy that has had its clutches on the throat of America for at least the last 80 years, since World War II for sure, probably much longer than that. Really, this all began in 1913 with the creation of the Federal Reserve, and I don't think we're going to have that thing very long, though I can't say that for certainty. I don't know how that'll work. If I could look at the trends, I would see that we are entering in. I've been saying this online, and some people don't know what it is. We are living in a timeline right now that is right at the end of if you've ever read the book, The Fourth Turning, if you haven't read that book, get the audio book, download it. They do a great job in that book. These are predictive analytics. I believe The Fourth Turning was written about 20 years ago, so right around the turn of the century. And around that same time, another book written that was written at that time called The Sovereign Individual. So we are in this last leg of the fourth turning, which always comes with crisis, and then it leads to change, and that change is really good for 20 years, historically speaking. Could last longer, could be shorter, but historically speaking, about 20 years. And then we are heading into a period in time that can only have happened through technology, and that really describes another book called The Sovereign Individual. So I really think that we are living in these types of times, and I'm going to walk through that after I go through the basic Rice Report and the stuff that we're dealing with right now, because it's crazy, guys. It is absolutely insane. It's awesome, and it's insane at the same time, and we are seeing crazy stuff. Planes falling out of the sky into cities, helicopters hitting airplanes. We don't know what that was that fell out of the sky in Philadelphia. I'll be completely honest. I don't mind people calling me a conspiracy theorist, but that didn't look like a plane to me after 3 days. I give everything 48 hours. I give everything 72 hours if I don't understand it. And I'd say I'm 50-50 on that, if not 80% thinking that wasn't a plane, and we're certainly not being told something, but that doesn't mean it's true. So let's get into what we do know is true, and I think that's the important part about what we do here is get you facts and figures and stats and then analyze it all and see what that means moving forward. And again, nothing on here is financial advice or advice. This is just 20 plus years of business experience and dealing in politics and all types of stuff, just what I'm seeing and what it can mean for us, the normal people. And I think that's exactly the route we need to start taking here because the change is imminent. So let's dig into the details a little bit. So congratulations, we're still 36 trillion in debt. That is no thanks to Janet Yellen. I'm going to get into that in just a minute. She really left the office with a bang. Satan's accountant really wanted to leave Donald Trump in a very precarious position, one that a U.S. president has not seen in well over 200 years. I'll get into that in just a moment. But 36 trillion in debt. We have we have $11.3 trillion in high interest rate debt that's coming due this year. So keep that in mind. That's a really big thing to think about. The stock market right now, I've been talking about this for 2, maybe 3 years now. The stock market has not made sense to me since really 2022 when you started seeing equities and gold rise at the same time. These are really big anomalies in the market that we haven't seen in many, many, many years. And it's starting to make sense to me now why the stock market can actually boom the way it is at the same time that gold is breaking new all-time highs every single day. And that happened again today. We hit another all-time high in gold. Now, the stock market itself right now is, as I've been saying, it's a medicine ball balancing on a baseball bat. It just takes a stiff wind to blow it over. I've been saying that for a long time. A stiff wind has not blown it over. It has toppled and recovered very significantly. Now, as I stated about maybe a year and a half ago, we do have plunge protection programs. These are stockpiles of cash that the government will inject into the market to provide liquidity. It'll also bolster the market and make it look really good so that people aren't noticing bad politicians and bad policies. As I said about 9 months ago, that fund looks to be about drained, and that's pretty accurate where we are currently. So right now, the top 10 stocks in the stock market carry about 75% of market action. And that has not happened since the dot-com bubble. That overweight, that over-concentration number was around 73%. Comes from the Kobesi letter. The over-concentration in the market is something that people really do not explain very well. Let me put it to you this way. If you have a kids basketball team, and you have everyone is 4'2", and you have two kids that are 6'9". Well, you're going to win a lot of games until one of those or both of those guys sprain an ankle, and now you're just the shortest team in the league. That's what an overweighted market kind of appears like. So if one or two of them sprain an ankle and happen to plummet, they generally drag the entire team down with them. And that's really where the stock market is today. It's kind of living in this limbo. And a report came out today, one that I have dug through today, not deeply, but I definitely read through it, that is explaining that a majority of the new money coming into the U.S. stock market is coming from dark pools overseas. This is not shocking to me. I said about 6 or 7 weeks ago that a majority of the money coming into the stock market today is coming in from overseas. Now, because it's coming from a dark pool, that doesn't mean it's dark money. It generally does, just to be honest with you, but dark pools just mean anonymous. So these are anonymous pools of money coming into the U.S. market to continue to prop it up. These could be coming from Saudi Arabia. They could be coming from Europe. They could be coming from anywhere around the world. But it is important to note that I believe where we are right now, the U.S. investor is burned out. We are burned out. Right now, 54% of the net worth of the average American home is in the U.S. stock market tied to equities. This is clearly a part of the Trump campaign that they have to focus on because nothing will deter momentum in a presidential campaign or a presidential run as president than a stock market crash. You could do the greatest things on planet Earth for a country, but if everyone loses their money, that's generally a bad thing during a presidency. Now, it's important to note that because it is something Donald Trump has to defend, and it's something that his enemies are going to try to propel. So I think you have to kind of watch that battle in the stock market, which is all pretty much fake. I mean, it's definitely a casino, and it always has been, and there's nothing different about that. It's just become more centralized over time, and it's become more of a controlled environment for the wealthy over time because we are watching the largest wealth discrepancy in U.S. history. Currently, in the last 4 years, the top 0.1%, not the top 1%, the 0.1% of wealth has grown exponentially. You're looking at 70, 80% growth in that area. The top 1% has grown by 65%. And the rest of America, 52% of Americans, the bottom 52% of Americans in wealth control 2.4% of the wealth in this country. This is a staggering number to even think about, just this huge wealth discrepancy. And that is the byproduct of 40 years of socialist invasion into our government. Socialists thrive on a very, very small, very powerful elite class where everyone else is pretty much a slave and no middle class in between. This is what President Trump is dealing with. He is dealing with a long-term, long-time plan that has put him in a position where he has to make changes to a nation that are so drastic, that are so against the norm, and the entire purpose is to rebalance the wealth in this country and to bring back harmony in this nation. But we are living through an era called protectionism. This is why you're seeing tariffs and why you're hearing a lot of talk about tariffs and taxes. And this is directly from the authors in 1997 from the Sovereign Individual. Again, I can't recommend that book enough to people. It will, number one, it will give you an absolute conviction that we are living in these times. And it will also give you a good, swift kick in the pants to get your technological skills in order and your ability to understand technology and to understand the modern wave and where we're going with digital currencies. This is a really big path that we're going down, and one that'll be focused on very heavily for the next 6 to 8 months, guaranteed, if not the remaining 4 years of his presidency. Again, we are not even at 2 weeks. I think today is day 13. It might be day 14 of President Trump's new run in the White House, and it has been spectacular and also extremely confusing. We have never seen this much change, not only in our country, but in any country in the world since World War I. Like, there haven't been this many drastic changes to policies, procedures, agencies, government oversight. These things are being abolished. They're being destroyed. They're being exposed. And there's a reason behind this. And I know that there's plenty of theories out there as to why this is happening, but this is a natural evolution. It's a very natural evolution that has been predicted by many authors, by many analysts over many, many decades, that technology would throw us into this new era of time. And it depends on who's in charge that determines whether it's good or bad. So before I get into who's in charge now, and I think we all know that at this point, Trump has made that very clear, coming in swinging a sword at a cake on day one, we have to look at who was in charge. Janet Yellen, super important position, head of the Treasury. Most people underscore this position and think, it's just another bureaucratic job. Well, it is. But at the same time, it's the most important. This is the accountant. This is the CFO of the nation. This is the most important person for the health and the financial security of the United States. And Janet Yellen, aside from her mushroom trips in China, Janet Yellen has the IQ of a cucumber and should never be in charge of counting beans at a local grocery store, yet alone being in charge of counting the money for this country. Here's what Janet Yellen did in the last quarter of this year. Number one, she added $711 billion in Q1. Q1, we use a different calendar for government. The year starts in October. So from October to December, Janet Yellen put $711 billion on the books, primarily through the sale of T-bills. This kept a lot of the pressure away from the short-term treasuries, the 10-year, the 30. And you'll notice that the 30-year and the 10-year are really the riding factors behind mortgages. So although we've lowered rates about a percentage point at the Fed, we've seen mortgage rates shoot up to 7% because they're based on those long-term 10 and 30-year notes. So she avoided that headache, meaning that it's going to be put off to Scott Bessent, who's going to have to deal with this. But she basically added $6 trillion in what's called hidden stimuli. And I want to thank James Lavish for the information he put out the other night. Hidden stimuli is something that wasn't reported. You really have to watch Edgar and some of these, and Fred and some of these other sites, excuse me, Fred, not Edgar. But you have to watch some of these other government reporting sites that are accurate, but they're not publicized. So you really got to keep an eye on that. Basically what happened is that $6 trillion is about 15% of the U.S. liquidity. That is now dried up. We're watching the reverse repo markets get drained. If you don't know what that is, the reverse repo markets are a place where banks can go get liquidity. Banks, nations, everyone around the world, they all hold U.S. treasuries and U.S. dollars. There really is no difference between the two. Many people describe our greatest export as the U.S. dollar, and I don't disagree with them. I think it is probably our primary function. The one thing that we do export out to the world frequently is our money, which is the global centralized dollar, the point of force that we can use to enforce tariffs. We can use it to enforce sanctions. And the world is looking for ways around sanctions. And to be quite frank with you, I think that sanctions are going to go both ways with larger nations at some point. That's going to be the scary part. But that's why we have Bitcoin and gold and things like that to avoid sanctions, if that comes to it. Hopefully it won't, but it certainly looks like it's going that way. So right now we have a lot of pressure on the 10-year and the 30-year treasuries. These are where we pay the most amount of interest. So think of it as a loan. A treasury is just a note, a treasury bill, a bond. They're all just a loan. So you give me $100,000, I give you some treasuries. I owe you 5% on those for the next 10 years or the next 30 years. And on top of that interest, I have to pay it in full when the maturity date comes about. Or you can trade them to someone else and sell them at a discount, rarely a premium, usually a discount. But you can sell them to someone else, and they're basically buying the U.S. debt. This has been going on for so long, it has become commonplace. It took us 215 years as a nation to get to $1 trillion in debt. It only took us less than 20 years to get to $36 trillion in debt. So what we've been doing really since World War II is offsetting all of our manufacturing, basically saying, you know what, we're going to keep ourselves weak. We're going to feed you our dollar. We're going to keep you strong. And then eventually that wears its welcome. And we are at that point where that welcome has been worn. And that's why you're seeing so many alternative solutions to monetary policy, to sanctions, to money. The fact of the matter is that the money printer has been burning the midnight oil for a very long time underneath all of our noses. And that's important to understand. That money printer, it's kind of turned off right now temporarily because we are shutting down agencies that generally just suck the liquidity out of the market and send it overseas, or finance the CIA to do something nefarious overseas. We've watched this for a very long time. But liquidity will come back in style. I'll give it 4 months. I would say in 4 months, we will be printing money like you've never seen before. And it has to be done to be able to correct some of the errors that we've lived through, which is why everyone's talking about Bitcoin and crypto. And I'm more than happy to do a breakdown on all these things and give you my opinion on things. I just don't generally feel like dealing with the internet when they disagree with you. All of a sudden you're a shill because your years of research determine that you're different in some way. But I will say that Besant and Lutnick are going to be two large players in this government moving forward. If you don't know who they are, definitely research them. They definitely have they're billionaire, multi-millionaire, and one billionaire. Lutnick is a big earner. CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald for a long time, 40-year friend of Donald Trump. And I think you're going to watch a lot of these conspiracy theories, and I'm a conspiracy theorist. So when I say something's a conspiracy theory, I'm using it the right way, about some of the crypto policies, you're already seeing it right now. There's going to be a crypto policy out, and then all of a sudden the next day, well, these 3 cryptos, they're not going to have any taxes. You need to buy them today. Fake screenshots of people posting things. It's just a crazy time. Like the information war right now, you think it's getting better because Trump's in office. You have no idea. It's getting far worse right now, especially financially, because we are approaching that sovereign individual moment. I don't know when it'll be. I don't know if it'll be 5 minutes from now or 5 years or 10 years from now, but we are certainly going from a centralized, controlled world into a desire for having a decentralized world. And I'm going to break that down at the end. But Bitcoin, we now have 19 states that have filed Bitcoin or digital asset stockpile memorandums or bills. 2 of them are passing as we speak. Texas is voting this week on a Bitcoin stockpile. If you don't understand Bitcoin, I can't explain it to you in 5 minutes. There is a video on my channel, Bitcoin 101. Just scroll down in the video section. It's really, people have told me it's really good. It's me talking, so I don't like it to begin with. But it's a very basic, very simple way to understand what Bitcoin is, what Bitcoin mining is. I can't explain to you how important the actual act of mining is to decentralization and how important that act is to personal sovereignty in the future. So I don't want to make this all about crypto. I want to make it more about understanding that crypto is different from Bitcoin. Far different. They are far different entities. And I'll break that down in a video later this week. I'm actually going to be on a podcast this week about this as well. But it's important to understand that they're going to have different classifications. And just to keep things simple without running ahead of the game, tomorrow, David Sachs, our crypto czar, has I think it's 1:30 Central, 2:30 Eastern time, press conference about the roadmap moving forward with digital assets. And I think that's a very important thing. I know that many people believe that the SEC is mean and they just pick on certain companies, and they don't. And they do. They're going to end enforcement, regulation by enforcement, and get back to clarity, which I think everyone needs. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest things. I don't think people hear any stories about Bitcoin companies during the Gary Gensler era. You can look at Dojo, even Tornado Cash, not really a Bitcoin company. But these companies, they weren't just slapped on the wrist and given a lawsuit. They were subpoenaed. Their assets were frozen. I rode on an airplane to Bitcoin 2024 with one of these guys who literally was penniless. He was a multimillionaire, ran a coin mixer. These are the stories that no one talks about. So the coin mixer is an interesting story. Coin mixer is pretty simple. Just say this pen is a $20 bill. And I go to the bank and I say, I'm going to deposit this $20 bill. Well, the bank takes my $20 bill. They throw it in a bin with other $20 bills. And then when I come back and ask for my 20, they give me a different 20, but they still give me $20. That's what coin mixers were doing with Bitcoin to maintain privacy so that no one knew which Bitcoin or what keys you held. These companies were absolutely raided. Some of them were imprisoned for weeks before they got out, and they had all of their assets frozen, and they're still, right now, to this very day, under investigation for providing the same service that a bank provides for a digital asset that the government can't control. So these days are rapidly coming to an end. I think it's super important. We all hear about the Ripple case and all that stuff. And the way they went about it is not good. Read the lawsuit. It wasn't completely unjustified. I would read the lawsuit and take the time to do that. I'm not speaking any junk, but it's very revealing as to why the lawsuit was filed. I've read most of these lawsuits. You can look at Ross Ulbricht, who was running a website using Bitcoin as payment because the government couldn't control it. And on the website he ran, people were selling drugs and people got hurt. So I don't condone that in any way, shape, or form, but I certainly don't think that that guy deserved 2 life sentences plus 40 years. And thank God President Trump kept his promise and let Ross out. That was a big thing that a lot of people have been into for years and years and years. The real threat there wasn't that they were selling drugs. Our government, our CIA is one of the biggest drug dealers in the world. The thing they didn't like is they couldn't tax him or control him because of Bitcoin. Period. Full stop, no argument. You can talk about it till you're blue in the face. And people will say, well, he sold drugs and he didn't sell drugs. There's plenty of, hit pieces out there about him. The guy ran a website and made a lot of money. The government didn't like it. They seized his Bitcoin, and that's what we're talking about with the Bitcoin stockpile from what we understand. The executive order says we will not sell the Bitcoin and the crypto that we currently have seized. That's it. No one's talked about buying any. No one's talked about adding to the stockpile. I'm just calling balls and strikes and watching this thing as I see it without any emotion or any conjecture to it. So tomorrow, David Sachs will be coming out at about 2:30, giving guidelines on the clarity in crypto. Now, there are multiple types of crypto assets, and I think that education is so important. So I planned on doing this in March. I didn't think they would move this quickly. But in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be heading to Florida next week for a great gala down there. And when I get back, I'm going to get into a crypto series where we're going to break down all the different types of digital assets. So we have, obviously, Bitcoin is its own self-sustaining. Bitcoin right now, the Bitcoin network, part of the hit piece against Bitcoin and mining has always been the electricity that we use. On the other hand, people don't talk about the electricity that we've provided or that certain Bitcoin miners use the power grid and they buy and sell back electricity to balance the grid. So if you're in Texas and your power hasn't gone out in the last 2 snowstorms or the last 3 years period, that is because Bitcoin miners are balancing the grid, providing real sustainable energy to an entire nation by providing, again, unconfiscatable, uncensorable money to the world, which is super important. And you can look at all the things that are chatted about in this new Bitcoin era. So there's Bitcoin. That's a whole episode I did, Bitcoin 101. Then you have crypto, which is basically corporate Bitcoin. I mean, there's no way to look at it. These are corporations that built it with in-house developers. And there's a huge argument on Twitter, and I'm not going to get into it because I just simply don't see how a corporate anything corporately tied really fits the bill to be measured directly next to Bitcoin. It's my opinion. You can disagree. Please feel free to bash me online. You're going to waste your time. I don't reply. It's just the way it is. That's my opinion. We're going to find out what the government has to say. So you have Bitcoin, you have cryptocurrencies, you have stablecoins, which are pretty much like they're a digital asset that doesn't move. They're generally backed by different types of assets. Some people use gold, silver, U.S. treasuries, dollars, pesos, yuan, it doesn't matter, whatever nation they're in, they back it with something that'll provide stability. The whole point of a stable coin is to be $1 and remain $1. That's the whole point. And they're used for really fast cross-border payments all the time. They're used to make payments and to shift from one asset to another. So if you go from Ethereum, I don't know why you would, but you go from Ethereum to Bitcoin, that is generally a stable coin transfer. Then you have NFTs, which are collectibles. I mean, that's really the best way to put it. They're pictures, videos. You're going to see, one thing you're going to see moving forward in the next 2 to 3 years, you're going to see a lot of new movies and a lot of new albums get released on NFTs. That's a very exciting thing. That's where crypto comes into play. Those corporate blockchains are really good for these types of things. So I don't want to sound like I'm bashing it. I think that there's a role for everything. We just need to stop confusing things as to what they are and what they aren't and who they compete with. And then you have meme coins, which are just truly collectibles. Donald Trump launched a meme coin right before his presidency on Solana, which I will note, David Sachs and his venture capital firm are the largest investors in Solana. And it took off like crazy. He made $7 billion in a matter of 14 hours. Now, a lot of people have a problem with this. I do too. I don't like seeing a president do things like this before they take office. But I think if you followed Donald Trump enough to know, you will realize that there's a purpose behind everything that he does. And he has not taken a penny. But the interesting thing is that all the insiders who are in there, and to give you an idea of this meme coin, 80% of the meme coin ownership of the coins issued into the market were owned by insiders. Much of it by three corporations that Trump owns: CIC, LLC, and then 10% was released to the public. Now, many of his cabinet members or people who've assisted with the campaign, they were part of this project. One of them is a 24-year-old kid. He made $20 million basically dumping his coins on everyone else, and the price went down. I think this is exposure to that market so people can understand at a very high level that most of all these meme coins are pump and dumps. One guy holds a bag, you build a market, drive people into it, get them to buy it, and then ultimately you sell your coins to them. That's how it works. So you have meme coins, NFTs, stable coins, Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and then real world tokenized assets. And this is a really big market moving forward. There's a lot of confusion as to whether if someone tokenizes an asset on your platform, if it'll make your native currency go up. And statistically speaking, that hasn't been done, so we don't know, but more than likely it's not going to do that. It's going to add volume to these blockchains that will ultimately provide, more liquidity and more cash, so your cryptocurrency may or may not benefit from it. Nonetheless, it's a good environment for a cryptocurrency. It's going to have more cash circulating. But a real world asset is a stock, a bond, a home, a building, a government contract, gold, silver. This is just a new way of pegging things. And the real problem in real world assets is going to lie in trust. And we'll go into those later. But this is the broad spectrum of digital assets. This is a whole new paradigm shift for many people who are used to having a physical piece of paper for their mortgage, or they're used to having gold and silver in their pocket. These things will be digitized. I'm a very big skeptic of real world assets because I think tokenization opens up whole new avenues of theft, of possible fraud, and of market manipulation in many areas. That's housing, buildings, but it's just rolling out. It's just starting to roll out, and people are just starting to get excited about it because it does have good benefits, right? So if I tokenize my home and I put it on a blockchain, now of my house, just say my house is worth $100,000. I can now issue 100,000 $1 tokens of my house and hold them all. And if I need money for something, I can sell 5% of my house and get cash and be able to pay bills. That's the good thing. It's also part of the New World Order, who planned on tokenizing all of our assets, putting them on blockchains and stealing them. So these are just facts. Again, we don't know, but it's important that we iron out this new economy that's rolling out. And crypto and Bitcoin have been around Bitcoin's been around 16 years. Crypto's been around about 15, 14. And these are still new asset classes. Many people don't understand them. So I'm going to run through education of each and every one of these things in 10-minute segments and hopefully do some Q&A and get some feedback on it, because there's a lot of promoters out there, but there's very few educators. And the educators who are educating are continually pumping something, which definitely means that they have a benefit from it. So I have no benefit. I buy Bitcoin. If you buy or sell Bitcoin right now, it's not going to impact my holdings at all. So if you sell it, you buy it. In traditional markets, when corporations are involved, people get paid. There's no corporation for Bitcoin. Anyone who's in Bitcoin and doing education is literally doing it for free because they want you to understand and see what we see. And crypto is no different. It's just, not all of them, but many of them are just trying to sell you something along with their free education classes or Patreon courses. I'm not going to do that. We're going to do it free on YouTube. I may open it up and do a whole Q&A so we can do, hey, here's what a stablecoin is. Here's how they work. I think you're going to be very shocked at what's going to happen in stablecoins because I think you're going to see maybe the most villainized stablecoin in the world become a very important player in U.S. economics very soon, because all the pieces are tied together. And I'll talk about that in another episode because we have a lot to cover today, guys. We have a ton to cover. But I think it's important to understand that we need that clarity. We all need that clarity so people can stop infighting about what the SEC is doing or what they're doing. And we need to start reading court cases to understand, not taking someone else's word for it. but it'll be important tomorrow. That's a big, important day to get some official clarity. We have 180 days to really clarify the stockpile issue. But before that 180 days is over, I think what they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, let's define these different areas of digital assets. Then we're going to create regulatory environment around them. We're going to give them regulations, rules, consumer protections. I think what Trump's trying to do by showing the meme coin is there's no consumer protection. Anyone in the world with a big audience or a big marketing push, they can put out a meme coin, give a narrative. People on Twitter will go spend $50, $60 buying it. It'll probably go up because everyone's buying it, but eventually the guys who launched it, they just start selling it. They make money. Haktua is the best example. This is it's a casino. It is an absolute casino, and it needs some consumer protection around it. I'm not a big fan of regulations in general, but I have seen multiple unregulated industries go into an environment of regulation, and I've watched 95% of them get crushed within days, and that may come. So the crypto environment's very excited about getting clarity and regulations. They should be, because that's going to make their life easier if they're following the rules. But I think consumers should be more excited about that, because education will come to the forefront and people will actually finally get the information they need instead of buy this, be able to explain it, how it works, what it is, and have some regulatory clarity around it. Now, the other thing that's happening is today, Besant, Lutnick, and Trump signed an executive order to create a sovereign wealth fund in America. And I just noticed from my Telegram page, not many people know what a sovereign wealth fund is. And I listened to a couple Twitter spaces and heard people explaining it, and God bless everyone's soul who's trying to help. But the explanations I heard were really way off. So a sovereign wealth fund is very simple. It's just like any other fund. It's just like any fund manager. It's like your mutual fund that you put money into in a 401k. You assign a fund manager. That fund manager gets rules, a mandate around him as to what he can and cannot invest in. And his job is to make investments, foreign and domestic, to generate profit and revenue for a nation to succeed and thrive. We have never had one of these. There are many countries around the world that have them. South Korea, Saudi Arabia, many countries have these huge sovereign wealth funds. Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund right now is investing in new golf leagues here in America. They're investing in film. They're investing in boxing. They're investing in things to diversify away from their holdings in oil. And you're going to watch sovereign wealth funds pop up all throughout the world, because a debt slave structure fundamentally issued by a Federal Reserve is exactly how we got into this position. And the only way out of it is to, if you're creating debt, you've got to find a way to create assets or equity to balance those two out. So a sovereign wealth fund in America is a mandate. It's a necessity at this point with $36 trillion in debt. We've got to put some of this cash to work and make good returns so that we can actually ultimately pay off the debt in some way, shape, or form. And I think the sovereign wealth fund, which, by the way, we don't know what the rules are of the sovereign wealth fund. We don't know if they can invest in only real estate or commodities or digital assets or Bitcoin or whatever. We have no idea. We just know they're creating a sovereign wealth fund. And the example Howard Lutnick gave is part of this narrative game that we see. And the narrative game to me is always fun, because you can look at, I follow all the trails and follow what people are saying. So if I'm following what I'm hearing, I have yet to hear crypto mentioned in digital assets. I have heard digital assets will be Bitcoin, stablecoin, tokenized assets. That's what I've heard. Doesn't mean it's the case. But Howard Lutnick, the head of Cantor Fitzgerald, who, by the way, is the only person who has actually audited the stablecoin Tether, which everyone seems to think is buying 87% of the Bitcoin in the world and driving the Bitcoin price through the roof, which is just ridiculous based on numbers. But they currently hold a lot of Chinese bonds because they weren't getting yield. And this is from, if you don't believe me, watch Howard Lutnick, Bitcoin 2024, his 20-minute speech. You can find it on YouTube. And he explained this model very well. So Howard Lutnick is now the Secretary of Commerce in this country. He's going to have his hands in many different things financially. And I really can't think of a more qualified guy, considering he has personal holdings in 800 different companies. And Cantor Fitzgerald is one of the largest money managers in the world. Also, the largest dealer of U.S. Treasuries in the entire country. So this is really the right guy for the job. And Howard Lutnick has come out and talked significantly about Bitcoin, about stable coins, and about Tether. I know that there's a huge amount of people out there who think that Tether is rigging the Bitcoin market, which is ridiculous when $800 to $1 billion from ETFs are going into Bitcoin, and that they're shady and they're not disclosing information. They give their version of an audit out to people because they haven't wanted to bend a knee. They've been delisted from exchanges in Europe because of MiCA regulations. Well, the MiCA regulations in Europe state that any stablecoin needs to hold 60% of its holdings to back its stablecoin in European banks. I've been covering this so long, I don't want to cover this much longer. Banks are in huge trouble with the debt that we have and the lack of liquidity. The last thing I would do for my token holders, for my stablecoin holders, is jeopardize 60% of my holdings in a bank that may go insolvent next week. So while Tether was accumulating treasuries, they had to go into China to buy them because we didn't have any yield on ours at the time. Howard Lutnick has met with them. He has testified in front of an entire conference of people and on the internet that they have the money they claim to have, but they don't want to come here and bend a knee to U.S. regulations. Now, he was just also appointed I think he was officially confirmed, but he got grilled on Capitol Hill like everyone else. And they asked him about Tether. He said he doesn't own any Tether. Cantor Fitzgerald gave him a $600 million convertible note. That's it. It's a 5% holdings in Tether. And you'll hear people talk about collusion and Tether's going down. It'll bring Bitcoin down, and whatever coin standing next to it will take all that liquidity. If Bitcoin goes down, the entire crypto market goes down. That was just evidence this past weekend when Bitcoin dropped 7% and the entire crypto market dropped on average 34%. It all rebounded really well. I mean, really well. Everything rebounded. And there's many reasons why that is. But Tether itself is an interesting story that people talk about, and most people just buy into whatever they're told from someone. They're minting this over. That's what stablecoins do. They anticipate new money coming in and they mint, and then they allow it to transfer into other assets. That's how they work. It's how they operate. But I think you're going to see Howard Lutnick, who has agreed that our stablecoins in the United States, issued in the United States, need to be 100% backed with U.S. Treasuries. He agreed to it on Capitol Hill. So I believe Tether will launch a new version of that and be completely, fully compliant with U.S. laws because of the relationship between the two. But it tells a much larger story. The much larger story behind stablecoins and why the government is rushing to digital assets is pretty clear. No one is buying our debt. We have a ton of debt. Stablecoins in the United States are going to be mandated to buy U.S. Treasury debt. This is going to inject liquidity into the market where it's needed the most. Donald Trump is not stupid. Howard Lutnick is not stupid. In fact, these guys are geniuses, where now stablecoins will absorb a ton of U.S. debt, which may at some point go negative. So there may be some imbalance in the stablecoin market in the next year or two, but that hasn't happened. So, but we will see a big push moving forward in this area through digital assets. And I'm just making this point and going on to it so long today because most people don't know what any of this stuff means. And I have a good understanding of it, and I want to be able to provide that education. So on Telegram specifically, you guys type in what you want to know and I'll explain it to you. But I think you're going to see a lot of crypto conspiracy theories get kind of squashed in the next 6 months, and that's fine. That's good. And the theories are like, I understand why people believe that. But at the same time, it's time for us to kind of get unified and understand facts and stop digging into weird things that are literally verified in front of us. So I think Tether will be a big player. I think USDC is in really big trouble because Lutnick basically stated in his 2024 Bitcoin conference speech that they didn't have much liquidity. They didn't have much. They could do $500,000 to $1 million a week. That is not a lot. Although they're paying a great yield, it's a great place to hold money. They are buying U.S. Treasuries. You're going to see a ton of stable coins hit the market in the next 2 years. There's no novel stable coin. They're all pretty much the same. And they're really good for payments. You can use a stable coin to make a payment in less than a second and a half, and the fees are fairly low. So it's a great way to transfer money. It's a great way for them to suck up and absorb U.S. debt that's no longer being purchased overseas. And I think Trump has made it very clear. Very clear. I mean, I know that there's people under the impression that BRICS is going to take over the dollar as the global reserve currency. I've said maybe the entire time, but I will, and it's a possibility, don't get me wrong. But Trump has made it very clear that if they continue to build their own currency, that he will issue a 100% sanction against those countries. We are watching tariffs take place, and I'm going to get into tariffs in a minute because it's the best story in the market right now. But it's important to understand that moving forward, you're going to see a lot of new stable coins. You're going to see a lot of new digital assets. And as we approach this time of decentralized governance and sovereignty, it's important that each and every one of you start to understand these things because they will become a part of your normal life within the next couple of years. It's really, really important. I don't think we'll get rid of cash. I hope we don't. If we get rid of cash, that's a really bad sign because it's like getting rid of privacy. But at the same time, I think cash is going to be faded very, very strongly over the next few years. So understanding it's great. You can go on Twitter. You can go on Twitter and push a button right there, and there's Grok. It's an AI system. Ask it questions. What's a stablecoin? How does it work? How does this work? How does that work? And you get a deeper understanding. I'm probably doing 2 hours of AI right now, and I swear on my life, my head's about to explode from the stuff you can learn. So use those things to your advantage as time moves on. I think it's really advantageous for everyone to understand that. And in the sovereign wealth fund, of course, as soon as a sovereign wealth fund is announced, everyone thinks they're going to buy my crypto, they're going to buy Bitcoin. We don't know what they're going to buy. Primarily, if I were going to guess anything, they would be buying real estate in this country and around the world. But one thing to understand about sovereign wealth funds, they are just a fund that the government owns. So it's like the government owning its own mutual fund that can trade back and forth and turn profits. We need profits in this country to turn things around. But there's a fear of centralization. So of nationalization. So in many countries that have had sovereign wealth funds, primarily communist nations, they use a sovereign wealth fund. They basically take money from tariffs, import, export, and taxes. They put it into a fund, they invest it. In bad countries with terrible leaders, they actually do use this to buy electrical companies and gas companies, oil providers, and they nationalize them. They basically make them owned by the government. But it will be determined in the documents when this thing launches whether or not it's an ownership model or it's a control model. And I think we're going to go into an ownership model. Donald Trump is an investor. He's a businessman. I don't think he wants control over things. I think he wants to profit from the things that happen that the government supports in this country. As Lutnick said in the meeting, he said, as an example, if we were going to pay for millions and millions of COVID-19 vaccines, we're going to want warrants in that company. Now, it's a scary example. That's part of the mind game, part of the narrative that people are just watching for the narrative that they've put in their head for the last couple of years, looking for their pieces. I listen to it all. I've never gotten sucked into anything, never. But Lutnick said that. He used that as a great example. And I know he'll get blasted online like, we don't want a sovereign wealth fund to buy COVID-19 shots. Neither do I. Neither does he, as far as I can tell. But what he's using as an example, he's literally telling you that the last government gave Pfizer and all these other vaccine companies, gave them a ton of money. They made a ton of money, and the nation got stuck with the bill. So a sovereign wealth fund in the era of Trump is a way for them to basically put their boot on the neck of profiteers that are trying to steal taxpayer dollars to fill their pockets. So a sovereign wealth fund, if it's under an ownership model versus a control model, is maybe the best thing that's ever happened to this country because we have so much money, so many assets, and so many good businesses. Look at our social media companies. Look how much money they've gotten from the government. What has the government gotten in return? What have we as taxpayers gotten in return? A sovereign wealth fund balances that power that's totally imbalanced. You can look at the Twitter files. Billions of dollars went to Twitter from the government. The government owns none of Twitter. I don't want the government owning any private enterprise. I'm just going to throw that out there point blank. But if we're going to continue to funnel money into monopolies, then our government should profit on warrants and stocks and options so that we can sell them in the market and be able to pay off the debt to the Federal Reserve that's generated by these companies sucking money out of taxpayer dollars. A sovereign wealth fund is an amazing thing if it's formulated and run correctly. If it's in the hands of an evil tyrant who's a communist, he's going to use taxpayer dollars to buy out industry and take them over and nationalize them and control them forever. I don't know how it'll turn out, but as I said, I try to give you some education and information on what things are and how they could work from both angles. I'm certainly in the camp where Trump wants to be able to drive as much profit through a sovereign wealth fund as possible, take that profit, pay off the Federal Reserve, release this country from all tyranny for all time. And if he can do that, he definitely has a spot on Mount Rushmore. So keep your eyes open, keep them peeled. The fact that we announced this today through an executive order is an exciting thing, but you got to give things time to develop. The crypto stockpile was, everyone on Twitter was going nuts. This is going to be the greatest thing. Oh, they're not buying our bags. I don't want the government ever to have their hands in sovereign money. Ultimately, they're going to have to, because the debt spiral that we're in, we're going to eventually have to start taking money that usually would go into treasuries and putting it into something that accelerates in growth to be able to pay off the Federal Reserve. As Trump said, maybe we'll pay off the Federal Reserve, the debt, with a little bit of Bitcoin, a little bit of crypto. So keep all these tiny little things in mind. And one other thing, Trump called Bukele, the president of El Salvador. They got off the phone. Bukele bought 17 Bitcoin. Crazy number. And then earlier today, Marco Rubio flew down to El Salvador to talk about one awesome thing. El Salvador is now opening its prisons for any migrants that we're sending into Central America. So El Salvador And I believe Trump and his team have been working hand in hand for years. El Salvador, I believe, is the model. Like I said many years ago, if you followed me on Telegram, if you want to see how the world is going to change, watch proxy nations. Watch nations that are generally bullied and deceived and run into the ground. We've bombed El Salvador. We have completely extracted their wealth through our economic hitman policy in this country. And Bukele has basically ended all crime by imprisoning criminals, some of them for life, most of them for life, and all of them are now doing public service to provide public good. They've adopted Bitcoin and sound money. And of course, there's another conspiracy theory there. He did take a $1.3 billion loan from the IMF. They made Bitcoin legal tender, which is all any crypto or Bitcoin. I don't care if the government buys, just make it legal tender and allow it to compete in the open market, not for speed, but for value. Like, let it compete. In El Salvador, they did that. There was a huge conference. I have 4 friends that went down there. They used Bitcoin everywhere they went. Every store accepted it. They actually would rather that than the US dollar. But since this time, El Salvador, since he took office, they've been living and dying off the US dollar and Bitcoin. The IMF came in and said, hey, you found $3 trillion in gold. Important to note, $3 trillion stockpile under the ground that they can mine. The IMF wants their hands on it. He took a $1.3 billion loan and basically said, okay, Bitcoin's no longer legal tender. What does legal tender mean? Legal tender means if a customer wants to use it in your store, you have to take it. That's all it means. So it's no longer legal tender in that country, but it's still available. It's not a forced option. It's a voluntary option, and it's still thriving. So different perspectives on things is very important, and it's important to never get caught in an echo chamber and pay attention to what's truly happening in the world. But then Marco Rubio met with him, and as soon as Marco Rubio left his home today, he bought another 11 Bitcoin for $1.1 million. These are really interesting numbers, real interesting correlations. And I will say this right off the bat, Marco Rubio, I'm not a fan of Marco Rubio. He has, at least to me, I don't know him. I never met the man. And if I'm wrong about you, Secretary of State Rubio, I apologize for misjudging you. But he seems to be a chameleon. He started out, I believe, in the Tea Party and then essentially had left-wing ideals for years in the Senate. Then he became part of MAGA and America First. And one thing I can say about the guy is that he is absolutely a perfect soldier. Everything Trump is telling him to do, he's now taken over USAID. He has taken on tremendous responsibility, gone to El Salvador. He's been to the border, all in a matter of 2 weeks. And I will say this, I was skeptical of him only for one reason. He got voted in 99-0. That means that every Democrat but one who abstained voted for Marco Rubio. And that to me was a big red flag. But in the first couple of weeks, can't ask for a better soldier. He is executing the America First plan out there perfectly and building international relationships, which is the job of the Secretary of State. And I think we'll see a drastic change between him and Pompeo. And you can let that go any direction you like with Mike Pompeo. Now let's get into the fun stuff. So that's money. So let's get into politics. Politics, like, where do we start? Good Lord. I probably need to start doing these every day so I don't get so far behind in what I'm talking about here. Let's just start out with the great things, okay? So there's some concerning things that I've talked about on other podcasts. Concerning things are concerning things. They don't mean anything yet. The things that are actually happening right now are the things that are really important. So first and foremost, our border is getting shut down. We are sending illegals out of this country. We are pulling people out of their homes and sending them home. That's exactly what we asked for. It was delivered. The great people of North Carolina are finally getting the help that they need. They have lived through a snowstorm in tents, and now there's $100 million in financing, new homes being built. President Trump visited there. California, LA burned to the ground. They didn't have any water. President Trump sent military out to turn the spigot back on and get water into LA. Most importantly, he confronted the mayor of LA and made her look like the idiot that she is. And he is just continuing to put his foot down. And I am so excited every day. It's almost difficult to sleep in at all because I want to get up and see what's happening with the new Trump saga every minute of every day. It's ridiculously fun to watch. So illegals are on their way out. Democrats don't want that to happen. It's their meal ticket. They all take money from NGOs and everywhere else that promote illegal migration into our country. We've seen 2 plane crashes in 2 consecutive days. So we saw the Washington, D.C., or I think it was D.C., the helicopter hitting the plane. That is still unknown. There are a million people out there pulling out some great information, some good digs. We don't know. I don't know who the pilot was. I think they've disclosed it now. The mere fact of the matter is that I look at odds of things. I'm just an odds guy. the odds of a helicopter colliding with a plane at that height approaching a runway are really, really slim. So I highly doubt that was an accident. That's just my opinion. I don't know if that's the truth. The other plane crash in Philadelphia, randomly out of nowhere, a plane flying from Philadelphia to Kansas City. I love the tie-ins. I love the cool stuff. Right? We have a Super Bowl between the Eagles and the Chiefs coming up. I think it's important to note that the Eagles are 666 and 665 all time with playoffs included. So I would assume the devil will allow the Eagles to lose and be 666, 666 all time. But a plane flying from Philadelphia to Kansas City crashed in Philadelphia. It was a Learjet 55 that contains 1,100 gallons of jet fuel, which is very explosive. I will say firsthand, the first day and a half, I thought for sure that's a plane crash. I think something different may be happening there, having looked at the wreckage and the blast site and all the drone footage that we're getting. Nonetheless, looking at the odds, two plane crashes over metropolitan cities in 2 consecutive days in America is 1,000,000 to 1 odds. I ran it through AI. It's 1,000,000 to 1 odds of that happening. We're seeing trade war talks. Guys, we've been in a trade war since birth. That's what global commerce is. It is a very much an elitist model of making a big stink about doing stuff and charging more money. So ultimately they make more cash. We're not watching a trade war. We're watching a reckoning. And Trump putting tariffs on Colombia that lasted 6 hours, Canada that lasted 48 hours, Mexico 48 hours. You're seeing the power of tariff. It's not about the tariff itself. It's about the threat of the tariff. As I said, from the moment he did this, these are negotiation tactics. Will we have tariffs permanently in some of these countries? Probably, because I believe we're going to a sovereign era in society that most people can't even spell the word sovereign, yet alone understand what it means, because we've never really had that available. But those are interesting. The new one that's coming out, came out a few minutes before we got on air here, is him talking about Ukraine repaying us with rare earth elements, rare earth metals and different materials that come from the ground. This is the best idea I've ever heard, by the way. If we're going to give you money or loan you money, and you are most people don't realize how much lithium is in Ukraine. We talk about it being the breadbasket of Europe. It has so much gold, silver, uranium, and lithium in that country. That's why it's being destroyed. People want to destroy it, get people out of there, take over the land. Very similar to what we watched in North Carolina and some of the fires in Wyoming or Montana. Kind of weird things happen over very valuable pieces of land. And Trump is now basically saying, hey, pay us back with rare earth elements, because the plan there was to destroy Ukraine and sell all the rare earth to China, who's actually helping financing the thing too, but they would take our money. USAID is under complete fire. I mean, there have been people covering USAID for literally 10 years since I've been involved in this. This is one of the most corrupt crony capital organizations in the world. Even RFK came out and said that the CIA used $5 billion from USAID to overthrow the Ukrainian government in 2014. 2014 was a very interesting year in world history, by the way, and I think it'll be in history books for a very long time. If you'd like me to, I'll go a segment on that in the future. But I have so much stuff to cover, and I have only an hour, and I'm in the middle of a fast, so I'm getting a little tired here as I get ready for bed. But trade wars aren't going to happen. We may see a trade war with China that'll last a month or so. Globalism has created dependency. So the structure of multiple nation states that are interconnected through global trade creates dependency, where rulers have more power over their people and other nations have more power over other nations. So that the puppet masters on high, they're in permanent control of it all. This is being shattered and destroyed in every possible way. So Mexico got tariffed. Now all of a sudden they're totally on our side. They're going to send 10,000 troops to the border. Canada got tariffed. Now they're going to spend $1.3 billion to shut down fentanyl coming in from the northern border, which is just as big a problem right now as the southern border. Many people aren't talking about that. Trump is now talking about the Department of Education, dismantling that. And it's really funny to watch this online. I saw a liberal on Twitter that posted, we're only ranked number 26 in the world. How can we end the Department of Education? Well, we were number 1. So the Department of Education took us from number 1 globally to number 26. Your kids have suffered at the cost of crony capital stealing tax dollars to fill their pockets while filling your kids' head with nonsense and transgenderism. That era is going to be officially over, and I would bet no longer than 2 weeks, in a full reconstruction of our educational system, hopefully passing it back to the states and allowing parents to decide where their kids go to school and transferring the taxpayer dollars to do it. School choice is a big thing out there that really few people have talked about. Trump's talked about it from day one, so I assume that's going to happen relatively quickly. But the funny thing about the tweet is that, this poor lady didn't realize that the Department of Education is what got us at number 26. It never got us to number 1. We didn't have a Department of Education at that time. And more importantly, I heard another funny story from a parent that said, yeah, we need to get rid of the Department of Education. I said, why? And she, or it was he, I don't remember. But the story was there's two young girls sitting at a high school football game. One girl says to the other, hey, can we go? And the other girl says, no, it's only halftime. The other girl looks back at her and goes, how many halves are there? Like, these are big indicators that our Department of Education is failing kids all the way up through high school. There's only 2 parts to a whole, so 2 halves make a whole. Our kids don't even know that basic math. I have been to Menchie's with my kids for ice cream. Had $16 and something cents for ice cream. Gave the girl a $20 bill. It took her at least 5 minutes to figure out what my change was. The Department of Education has significantly failed this country, and these are long tail effects on an overall society. Katie Hobbs in Arizona is being looked at for the corruption that she has imposed. She's basically bought off by cartels, allowing cartels to run Arizona. Tom Homan has said that he will arrest. Tom Homan is the greatest, by the way. If you don't like Tom Homan, we can't be friends. That guy does not care. He does not give a crap. He is going to get everyone out of this country that has ever been in here illegally, and that's exactly who we need in place. One of the funniest posts, I forgot who posted it. Somebody had a picture of, this is Tom Homan, don't deport people, and he pushes a button and catapults a person over a fence. And that needs to be done. I don't care how cruel or how evil that sounds to any of you liberals. You probably don't watch this show anyway. Those people are stealing from you. They're stealing from your finances. They're stealing from your kids' future. They are here illegally. Yes, many of them do contribute well to society, but they are stealing jobs that your high school kids could have in order to build a brighter future for themselves and for your family. And I'm not willing to sacrifice that for someone who broke the law to come into my country. I don't apologize for that stance. We talked about Lutnick. I think that's huge. 300,000 Venezuelans who were protected status in this country are no longer protected. They'll be going home very soon. Venezuela is a nasty place. It used to be a great place until a dictator took over and completely destroyed the country. Panama is now, currently Panama Canal makes about $2.5 to $3 million a year charging U.S. naval ships. We built and paid for that canal. And now Trump has basically said, yeah, we have free transportation or we're taking your canal. Guess what? We got free transportation. The EU is up next. So the tariff wars are the greatest thing ever. I mean, they're funny to watch. Oh my God, he's tariffing Mexico. Our avocados are going to be so expensive. Well, the avocados were ridiculously expensive during COVID when they couldn't have been shipped. And no one seemed to have a problem with expensive avocados when everyone was wearing masks and taking vaccines. But when a man puts his foot down because he wants a good deal for our country so that our kids can prosper, all of a sudden it's a bad thing. It is interesting to watch this. So the EU is next. He is going to be tariffing in the EU. What we're seeing through USAID, and I'm not going to, there's so many other podcasts that cover this. I don't know if I believe this number, but one of the numbers coming out is we've spent $600 million on sushi. I don't know if I believe that number. That's like an entire ocean of raw fish. So I don't know if that's true or not, but the spending is exorbitant. I mean, we can see it from financing coups to private parties to transgender surgeries in foreign nations, DEI classes in foreign nations. And we're not talking about a few bucks. We're talking about millions and millions of dollars for really stupid things overseas. This has been a center point of money laundering in this country, and it's no longer live. So it is going to be audited, is going to be picked apart, and I hope and pray that every day that a ton of people get arrested for the corruption they've had. People at the Department of Treasury are now coming out and saying that they have worked there for over a decade and they have never been allowed to deny a payment, meaning our Treasury Department dictates what happens. Regardless if we're sending money to an oligarch or a terrorist or a horrible organization, they've never been allowed to decline a payment. If the treasurer told them to make a payment, they had to make the payment. These are things that are going to be coming out in mass in the next 4 to 6 months. And I think we're going to learn a lot more about that. And some of you know what I'm talking about. But we'll kind of wrap this up. There's so much to cover, guys. So the military strikes on ISIS. I mean, I think we're watching Trump with real subtle clues. You know, he put a video out of a drone strike on ISIS in Somalia. I think that was a warning to the cartels because as of 2 hours ago, the U.S. military is now in Mexican airspace, and that's coming from Colonel McGregor online. So, and again, misinformation's everywhere. I'm just reporting what I've seen. What I'm seeing in trends right now, I'm going to end it on some humor before I get into the sovereign individual. The CDC also shut down right now, withdrawing all their white papers, all this other stuff. On top of all this, Joe Biden just got a contract with CAA, which is the largest agent in Hollywood, for God knows what, for new movies. So we had some fun on Telegram today, just thinking, would you call it Weekend at Biden's? You call it The Walking Dead, the presidential election, The Mask Part 3. There's so many different puns that you can play on that. But I find it interesting that Obama and Big Mike, Michelle Obama, that they got some, big Netflix deal, and now Biden's getting a CAA deal. Like, how is this guy going to act? He can't even read a teleprompter. Like, what are we doing in this country? This is definitely a big part of the movie that we're watching right now. It's fantastic to watch. But I will wrap this up by saying the sovereign individual, again, these could be predictive programming or just deep analytics. I will say that the authors of that book wrote 3 other books that about 90% of what they wrote came true. In the sovereign individual, to kind of summarize it for you, it speaks of an era from 1997 to really describing where we live right now, where technology will become so advanced. I mean, we have AI right now that can take this image on this video and make it look like I said anything to you, which will probably happen. But with the onslaught of AI and high compute and Bitcoin mining, which is high compute is just high energy areas for high computations to do Bitcoin mining algorithms or to do AI. They're both kind of the same data centers with different computers. But when we look at this new era that we're living in, we will probably in the next 5 years not need lawyers. We will probably not need accountants. We will definitely not need, internet marketing. This will all be set in place with AI. AI is truly it's kind of the definition of humanity. In the right hands, open sourced and fully decentralized, I think it's the greatest thing that humanity could ever have. And that's not exaggerating. If it's in the wrong hands and fully centralized, it will be the end of humanity. So I'm happy to do an AI segment or show about it, but I won't get too deep into it. But the authors in The Sovereign Individual were basically talking about an era where technology would become so advanced, our ability to communicate around every corner of the world, to be able to, like social media is a very good example. He talked about the advent of digital currencies, which would be Bitcoin and crypto, and stablecoins and NFTs and memes, and all the other digital assets that exist. He talked about an era where we would go into what's called protectionism. Now, if you haven't noticed this, many nations around the world, patriotism is back in play, right? Everyone is patriotic, and we should be. America is the greatest place on earth. It has been the greatest nation, but futurists for many years have predicted the end of the nation state and the beginning of the nation city, or the mega city. And I think that's probably a natural progression of humanity. There's 2 parties. There's one that want to, you have dark and light, right? So you have dark rulers that want to use all of these same basic evolutions of humanity for their own purposes. And then you have light rulers that want to use these advancements for the greater sovereignty and freedom of people. And I think Trump is this change agent. I know Trump is this change agent. And now, of course, there are things that I disagree with, like putting Larry Ellison and Sam Altman putting them in front of the world exposes them. But, having those guys even talked about with AI is just dangerous in every level. So we'll see what happens with that. But the fact that he's building massive data centers and opening up the energy sector, which goes hand in hand. High compute is all about energy arbitrage. In order to have good computing power, you have to have really good prices on energy. So that's going to be at the forefront of the next 2 or 3 years. But in this book, in Sovereign Individual, it talks about things that are happening right now. Protectionism. So as people start to become more sovereign, they desire personal freedom, personal choice. They're tired of being ruled by rulers. They want to find their own communities, right? So we see this big homesteading movement. You're seeing digital communities form where people identify with a certain, digital community in the real world. They're foregoing voting and doing all these things. He predicted an era of a decentralized world, and a decentralized world is one that Trump has alluded to. And one of the things that people don't talk about is when Trump said, if you elect me, you'll never have to vote again. What did he mean? Like when he said that was like, oh my gosh, that's the sovereign individual. Now, of course, there's 2 ways that cookie can crumble. Of course, Klaus Schwab has said you'll never vote again because AI, he's a dark ruler, right? So he's a dark human. So he wants to use AI to just track everything that you do and then make an assumed vote based on your taste, regardless of what you think. I think Donald Trump is moving us into a decentralized world where voting won't need politicians, where we won't need, so much government overreach into our lives. We can use blockchain and vote on things. That's definitely a part of it. But he talked about that specifically in the book. He said that technology would evolve and humanity would be so choked out by the thought of government tyranny that they would desire to break free, and that they would use digital currencies, and that they would use, he wasn't saying crypto or Bitcoin. He was just saying a form of internet money that would ultimately set humanity free. And I agree with him. But he also talked about this era of protectionism. And protectionism is what we're living through right now. The idea of a nation state, right? Because even Trump said, you'll never vote again. I don't know what that means. And he also said, we need to protect our southern border, but Canada is ours. It's just an imaginary line between us and Canada. And of course, that goes back to old treaties, and there's certainly historical value there. And some really good researchers have pointed that out. But in the end, anything could go either way. I've said this from the very beginning, that the Great Awakening and the Great Reset, whatever side you want to look at, they're going to look identical until the very end. They're going to look identical. Like statements like that, voting. Well, you'll never vote again. Well, does that mean he's a king, or what does that? We don't know what that means. I think it means that the world is going from centralized tyrannical control into a decentralized sovereign nation. Whether that includes Canada, Greenland, Mexico, I don't know. These are all head games. These are all negotiation tactics. We live in psychological warfare. But what's obvious to me is that during this era of protectionism, where the state would clamp down and say, okay, you know, and you can watch what's happening. So Bitcoin is invented, digital currencies are invented, nations embrace them. El Salvador is a great example of this. There are more high IQ, wealthy people moving to El Salvador right now than anywhere in the world. So what's happening is you have a nation that says, I'm going to give you choice, I'm going to give you sovereignty, I'm going to do what the state should do, which is eliminate crime and then allow you to do what you want and use what money you want and build your own world here. And what he's saying in this protectionism phase in the sovereign individual, I'm probably doing a bad job of explaining this. Been a while since I've been live. But what he's doing and saying in that book is that technological advancements will build this ideological battle at some point between, do you want self-sovereignty or do you want to be governed by the state? And the state will begin to realize this, and the state will clamp down. They will make it more tyrannical. They will make it more enforced, which we just lived through for 4 years. We watched tyrannical lockdowns. We watched all that stuff. That all happened. But ultimately, that someone would come through and break through for sovereignty. So while we have this nation and we have borders and we have taxes, we have laws, we have rules, there are other nations that are eliminating those things and they're attracting talent. This is what's called jurisdictional arbitrage. So right now in a digital world, you can go live anywhere you want. You can go do anything that you want, and nations are losing their grasp on citizens. They're losing that grasp. And Trump is maybe the first big name politician that's acknowledged this and is now setting it free. That's why he's rushing into crypto and digital asset stuff, because that will create levels of freedom. There are certainly some that are more free than others. But it's building in play. And as this protectionism comes into play, he's saying that nation state rulers will clamp down, offering tariffs, reducing or eliminating taxes. Tariffs will make profit in the right area. If you're producing in this country, you're going to make a lot of money. If you're importing, you're going to lose a lot of money. That's protectionism. He's protecting the nation by bringing people here, high talent, high quality, high profit businesses. He wants them to be American. This is literally straight out of that playbook. And then he talked about the elimination of taxes, because taxes are a single I live in Texas, and I came here for freedom, but one of the main benefits was I moved from California to Texas. I just saved 13.3% of every paycheck that I ever get. And I feel free here because I'm not overburdened by a state that's still chasing me down for money they say I owe that I disagree with and I'm not going to pay. Take that to the bank. There's something to this. When you're imposing tariffs, you're encouraging people to come to America, your best, your brightest, your most prosperous, your most lucrative. Come here and produce. We're going to eliminate your taxes. We're going to make it really advantageous for high quality, high talent people to come here because everyone's moving around the globe. You can see this happening in El Salvador. You can see this happening in Dubai. Dubai has built an entire crypto tower. They have built an entire city that has no taxes, where there's not a single piece of garbage on the street. You're watching a sovereign individual come to life, where you will find nation states that want eternal tyranny, and they're going to keep as many basically poor people in that country as they can, while the wealthy flee to these areas that treat them right. It's all about talent acquisition. Countries are just like businesses, and Donald Trump is making this country into a very attractive country for people from foreign countries to come to and set up shop, so that whatever taxes do get imposed on those corporations, that the United States collects it, so that we can use that money, pay off our debt, and create a better nation for our kids. Read the book, read The Sovereign Individual. He specifically talks about tariffs, taxes, talent, jurisdictional arbitrage. That is already here. I have plenty of friends of mine that I don't even know where they live. They live in a different country every 20 or 30 days, and they're living on Bitcoin or their crypto, whatever they're using. And they're taking it with them from nation to nation and living, honestly, pretty incredible lives from what I can see from the pictures. I'm kind of a homebody. I'm not going anywhere. But I love that freedom is now available, and that's only available because of technological advancements. The advancements of air travel allow you to be portable. The advancements of cryptocurrencies, and specifically Bitcoin, allow you to be able to take all of your wealth with you on an airplane anywhere you go and use it any way you like. That's total freedom. The state can't control that. The state understands that it can't control that, which is why it's trying to entice talent into that space and work hand in hand with those communities so that they have some moniker of control. That is the era of protectionism. Trump is living in this era of protectionism, protecting the United States and making it safe, making it clean, making it prosperous, and making it a place that the most talented and intelligent people in the world will want to relocate their families and build the next level of technology that takes humanity into a whole new era of sovereignty. So that is what I'm seeing. It's kind of long-winded. Geez, it was about an hour and 10 minutes tonight. A little long-winded, very heavy on crypto because I think that area is a space. People are going to hate me and disagree with my thoughts. They're just my thoughts. You don't have to believe them. You don't. I can back everything I say up with facts, but at the same time, look how tribalistic we are. I'm a Bitcoiner. I'm not a Bitcoin maxi. I'm not out there calling people names because they're investing there. It's your money. You invest it anywhere you want. You follow your own research, do your own research, get your own things done. I just want to be able to help in the basic education. So when you're doing research that you can actually understand what it is you're investing into, because this is the future, no matter how you want to look at it. But the good news is for those who are gold bugs, because I have gold. I love gold. I love silver. I love all these other things. I think they're great hedges for what's coming. I think we're going to see a dry up of liquidity in the next 3 to 4 months. And then I think we're going to see liquidity in this market injected through money printing that you've never seen before, at a level you have never imagined. And it has to be done to dilute the debt of the United States out. If you owe $100 million and you print $300 million, it's easy to pay off $100 million. That strategy will probably come into play. Trump has a nuclear weapon at his disposal. Every president has, of revaluing the gold in the Treasury. That whacks out maybe $2.5 trillion in debt. Doesn't really do much, but it certainly takes care of it. So we have a lot of different things that could happen in the near future, and near future being 4 to 6 years, that are going to change the way humanity operates, the way that humanity runs. And I believe that everything that we're seeing, because you have people who are following Q and doing all these other things, these are all natural evolutions. This is the prediction of analysts 25 years ago that technology would take us right where we are today. And I'm thankful for every moment that I have on Earth to watch this, because I think we're living through the absolute greatest times in human history. Read books. Stop watching internet. It's like, read some old good books. I actually have a copy of it right here. Read this book. Read The Sovereign Individual. I gave this in my, I did a book review on Rumble and YouTube. That was one of the 25 books I recommended. Read that book. Read The Fourth Turning. It's over here. So I literally have a pile of books that look like a 50-year-old bookstore over here. Buy old books. Read about history. Understand where we're at, and then read forward thinking like The Sovereign Individual to understand how history evolves over time. There is no stopping the technological evolution of mankind. There's no stopping it. It's just, do we want to live in a sovereign world where we're free to do as we please, or do we want to live in transhumanism where we're told to do what we're told to do? And it's clear to me at this point, and it has been for a long time, that Donald Trump is the change maker. However, there are certain things we need to deal with. Israel, the Israel issue is an issue that he's going to be a stickler on. I think that'll resolve itself in the next couple of years. Everything else has been just smoking hot, coming off the presses every single day. I am enjoying thoroughly watching bad people face consequences, and I hope it continues, and I hope it gets even worse for them. And I hope that everything that they have done to this country is fully exposed so that everyone can understand just how badly we've been treated in an era in time where other nations are really acknowledging this transformation and building safe havens for innovation, for spirituality, safe havens for religions. This is going to be a very tumultuous time. I can't stress that enough. What Trump is doing is going to cause ripple effects around the globe, and it already is in just 2 weeks. Imagine what this looks like 4 to 6 months from now. Buckle up. It's going to be interesting. Everything's going to be fine. It's going to be very scary along the way, and it's going to be very expensive for a period of time. Printing a lot of money will be good if you have something that's sensitive to liquidity. Bitcoin is the most liquidity-sensitive asset that has ever been available in human history. Whether you love Bitcoin or you hate Bitcoin, look into it, do your own research. As a lot of people have said, buy a little, it might catch on at some point. I happen to see the writing on the wall. I think it's very clear to me. I listen to facts and I listen to trends. And I think that some of your crypto stuff is going to be really good too moving forward. But I think getting into that space, understanding it importantly, get a little bit, do what you got to do. Make sure you're there. I love having gold and silver, but I can't spend it overseas, and I certainly can't cash out for it without leaving my house. So there are certain things to look at, just rebalancing this stuff. Gold is going to do fantastic. I'm predicting $3,000 gold within the next, 60 days. I think you'll see gold hit 3,000. It's just bouncing all over the place. If you see a stock market correction, you'll see gold go to $4,000 pretty quickly. You could see cryptocurrencies of all types skyrocket or plummet. But I look for the steady course, and that's why I like Bitcoin. I think it's a very steady trajectory to a very high number in a few years. And many people hate it, and that's fine. And they hate me because I talk about it. So really think about that. But these are the times to pay attention. These are the times to get technologically advanced. Start using the AI that's available. GPT, Gemini, Grok, any of these free things that are out there. If you have questions in your head or you're reading something right now that you don't understand, like what's a sovereign wealth fund? I know what AI, I use AI every day. So I know what AI printouts look like. There's some really good influencers out there who, I can clearly see an AI printout. And when people show you an AI screenshot, by the way, look at what the question was that they asked. Ask AI the question yourself. There's a lot of people not telling the truth when it comes to AI results. A lot of people. They're taking screenshots and doctoring them. You can do it yourself. Don't take the information you're seeing, especially from AI screenshots. Put it in yourself. Look at it yourself. It does change over time. You will ask the same question and get 4 different answers over a period of 4 weeks. It's part of the flaw of AI. But for stuff like what's a sovereign wealth fund, there's some good influencers out there that are putting it into AI, cutting and pasting it, and saying, here's what a sovereign wealth fund is. You can do those things on your own. It's actually important that you do those things on your own. When AI becomes more advanced, which it already is, when they release the advancements on humanity, you don't want to be unprepared. So start using it to educate yourself. I pull up stuff all the time. Some of the stuff I put on my Telegram about Israel and Lebanon in particular. I didn't realize Lebanon was 40% Christian, and the towns they were bombing were heavily Christian. Those are facts, and they're displayed right there. But it allows you to develop your mind and use the technology and get used to that question and answer model and start storing it away in your memory bank. There's a lot of free courses online on how to use AI. What crypto is, what Bitcoin is. I would really start educating yourself, because these are the trends of the future that are literally undeniable at this point in time. So that said, on top of all of that, and I probably got through half of what you guys want me to get through. On top of all of that, I think the most staggering statistic I've seen in the last 30 days came out from a very obscure place of the world with all this AI, politics, money, crypto, gold, all these things that are happening that all of our minds are captured with all the time. The sale of the Holy Bible is up 39.4% year over year for the last 2 years. So while mankind may be thrust into technological innovations, there is one standard truth in this world, and that is that God loves you, Jesus loves you, and that your faith is far more important than your money. It's far more important than your reputation online. It's far more important than any social media app you're using. There is only God and your family, and everything else is trivial in this world. And you will ultimately find yourself in a position, no matter who you are, in the next 6 to 9 months where the world will spin so quickly that you'll be thankful that you've grounded yourself in prayer. So in the middle of all this turmoil, in the middle of all the crazy things happening in the world, trade wars, bombings, wars, rumors of wars, the Holy Bible is back on the rise as one of the top-selling books in the world, and that is the most calming effect I can possibly give myself through these difficult, trying times. So I hope that was enough for you guys. It's been a while. I'm going to hop back on here 2 or 3 more times this week. I've got a couple interviews coming out on some very interesting topics, especially from the inside on the child trafficking plague in this country. I'll be interviewing one of Trump's guys later this week about tariffs and what's going on with that. If there's people you'd like me to talk to, I'm not connected to everyone, but I certainly can get to some people and bring on some really good experts in here to get some education. Education will be the number one course of work. I don't care if you're watching this and you're 15 years old or you're watching this and you're 89 years old. Education wins all the time. Not going to school, self-education. If you don't understand something, go to AI. If you don't understand it from there, get a book, read the book, absorb it, learn it, read your Bible, pray every day, pray to God. Pray to God that you are here at this incredible time in human history where we are going from tyranny to sovereignty. And I think that's an unavoidable mark at this point in time. Now, that's never going to happen easily because the powers of the world love tyranny. It's how they made their powers. This is not going to be an easy journey. It is going to be very interesting to be part of. And since you are part of it, get grounded in your faith. Be that light that shines next to the person that you meet who isn't as far along as you are. Educate yourself. Education, self-education, self-education, self-education. You can spend your time looking at things you'll never understand, or you can learn technological sophistication. You know, if your technological chops are, I know how to use email, you're not going to make it through this revolution. You're just not. I hate to be mean, but you're not. Learn how to buy Bitcoin and put it into a cold wallet. Learn how to do these things. These are going to be necessities of human life in the next 5 to 7 years. Without hesitation, I say that. So that being said, thank you all for being here so late tonight. Long live this evening. I'm sure we'll have some comments in the morning about it, but I'm happy to talk about any of them in a very civil way. So God bless all of you. God bless this country. God bless just what's happening right now. Take the time, educate yourself, get into prayer, get yourself in shape, do some fasting, exercise, whatever you got to do. The tides are turning, the times are changing, and I hope that all of you do with it and that everything becomes prosperous for you. So until next time, I'm Eric Rice. This is the Rice Report. God bless you. God bless this country, and we'll see you next time.